Okay, so we're back for week 8, the first session in English for Public Administration 1, 행정영어 1. And week 8 is usually midterm examinations week, but since we are working with the distance study program this semester, and everything's a bit delayed, everything's a bit different, a little bit slow, people were learning technology, we have delayed midterm exams until week 9. So what's coming up? Upcoming. Week 9 is midterms week. There are no classes with me. How your other professors handle it is up to them. Some of those professors might decide they want to have no midterm exam. Some may decide they're doing reports. Some might be doing midterm exams in week 8 or week 10. But in EPA1, we have no classes. We have 2 tests. We have a listening test as a group, which will be scheduled for the time that you usually should do the first class of the week. Now, we've never had a live class the first meeting of the week, but according to the official school timetable, there should be EPA1 night class starting at 8:30 on Monday, and EPA1 day class should meet at 3 p.m. on Tuesday. And so that's the rough schedule for our midterm test, the listening part of the test. And last week I quickly introduced how the test will work as a special video recording, and you can go back and look at that. Also next week we have one-to-one, used to be called man-to-man, interview test in Zoom. Now I want to remind you again that the listening test in Zoom is not at the same URL as our weekly meetings. And our one-to-one test in Zoom are not at the same address as we usually do our one-to-one meetings. There are different addresses. You'll need to check the CTL to make in the notice section to make sure that you are testing at the right time, and that you should check in to your test about 5 minutes early. Make sure your Zoom is working. I'm using the waiting room system for the one-to-one test, so you'll get the notice like I showed you last time. Previously, that notice that says please wait until the professor invites you, right? Be sure to check the timetable. Now let's go ahead and look very quickly at the timetable. We've done this twice before. I need to go up and go to the 공지 사항, and we have the timetables. Right, here's the timetable. Click on the link, and I'll slide it over and slide it down, and you can see the key midterms 2020-1. I don't know why that is there. And then you can see the time of your real test. Notice that I actually will start our group test 15 minutes early. Official start time for EPA1 day class is 3 o'clock. We'll start at 3:15. But that means I start speaking. And if you're late, you lose. There's no makeups. And the night class official starts at 8:35. We'll start at 8:45. It says paper test, but in essence it's a listening test using paper. Alright? and it's not too late to change your test time. As I said, all that I ask is that if you're going to test in the morning, please change it before late evening so I make sure I come. Please don't change 5 minutes before your test. That makes my life a little bit confusing. You can see that Friday is already pretty full, so don't expect to just delay till Friday. Testing is your responsibility. Come on time. Alright, and we move back here. I guess I can move to here, it doesn't matter. And there's a different address for Zoom to one-to-one. And if we check again, we'll see there is a different test for a different link for the interview test. The day class and the night class have a different Zoom meeting address. So don't pay too much attention. Don't memorize this. Check your class for your Zoom listening test address. And if you need to, on that same posting, it will have your meeting ID and the password. If the link is not working for you, you can access it that way. Day class, night class, different links. And I made a mention about labeling your work, but we don't need to worry about that right now. So let's go back to, let's just check the Jayu-Geshipan, which I said is your discussion board, and nobody has written anything. Not everybody's even looked at it. That's your problem. That's not my problem. All I do is set things up for you. After that, it's all up to you. If you have a problem, you talk to me. Question and answer, there's nothing. At least almost everybody has looked at it. That's a start. And the Haksubjadyo. And there's lots. Okay. This recording, this class recording, is our semester review. This is the review. So you can play it again, play it again, play it again, play it again. But I'm not giving you my notes. I'm not giving you any text in this review. You can take notes. You can compare to your notebook and you can add to your notebook. I'm not going to tell you the questions for the test. I'm going to tell you information you need. And it might be on this test, or it might be on the final test, or it might not be on any test. The test is not everything we studied in class. The test is a sampling. Alright. Next. This PowerPoint file that I have been using in our recorded classes and in our Zoom classes, I'm going to upload that to the Haksubjadyo after I finish this recording. Because who knows, in this recording, I might type something more. So I'm not uploading it yet. Alright? Gosh, I forgot to set my clock, so I need to look at it. Alright. This is my last PowerPoint slide that I have prepared before midterms. It talks about the next class for this week. Of course, for the night class, your second class this week is Wednesday evening at 6:50. And for the day class, your second class meeting for this week, excuse me, is Friday at noon. Okay, so that second meeting is a Zoom meeting. That's normal. We've had a bunch of them. In that meeting, we will do pages 21 and 23 in the book. Those are discussion pages where students are talking with students. And in that meeting, we will have question and answer. Anything you want to ask about the test, or anything I've talked about this semester, if you want to ask about things not connected to this class, wait until after the class so that other students don't waste their time. Anything about the test, anything about the semester, you can ask during the Q&A on Wednesday if you're a night student or Friday if you're a day student. But after that Zoom session, I will not answer any questions about the test or about our class, because that's just fair. If I answer other questions, some people don't get that benefit. So I only will answer questions during the Zoom. After that, social is fine, but test is not fine. And for some reason, this section is pretty dark. I don't know why. Anyway, that's all I have for the PowerPoint. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to shrink it just in case we decide we need to come back. So how am I doing this review? Well, I'm going to review through two mechanisms, two things. One is through the CTL, through the 학습자료, and one is through our book. And actually, I might maybe also pop up the PowerPoint, because there's a few things that I pointed to there, and I'm going to quickly I didn't preload this, so hang on just a second. That one as an example. Okay, so if we look at the CTL, you will remember we also have some assignments. In the beginning of the CTL, down here at the bottom, you can see welcome to class. That's not on the test. There's a bit about self-introductions. You had an assignment. I haven't graded it yet. It's Sunday afternoon right now when I'm recording this, and this evening, and tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday, which is a holiday, I plan to try to make comments on introduction stuff. Your student self-introduction, your work self-introduction, and your company introduction, if I haven't done that yet. So we talk about self-introductions. I don't need to do more of that. We've already done that half a dozen times. It's all there. It tells you the key language, right? Gives you a sample language. So that's easy. Talks about name cards. You should have a name card in your notebook. Now, you didn't have to give me your name card in your notebook when you turned in your notebook. You had an assignment for name cards. But for your test, which uses video, the face-to-face uses video, and the listening doesn't use video, doesn't need it, but I could ask you something from your name card. So you should have a name card that you're comfortable with, that you know about. Your company introduction, your self-introduction in the future, your business introduction should be related to your name card. Okay? I talked about the key learning points for the class. Don't worry about that. Talked about the idea of musical math. Do you remember musical math? If I ask you to tell me about musical math on your test, can you explain it? Musical math is the idea that every day that you don't study English, you forget. You go backwards. And you can do the math like in a 7-day week. You practice 5 days and you don't practice 2 days. 5 minus 2 equals 3. Ta-dum. Musical math. And then we did this whole series on basically language plus subject, content plus English, English plus public administration. And we had the 3 images there, the Bix plus Calp, 2 ideas and how they fit together in a chart, right? Basic interpersonal communicative skills, cognitive, academic, language processing, Calp. And then there was a chart that mixed the 2 together, so we could talk about that. Remember this one? Hang on a second, I have to download here. Oh, what a pain. Okay, fine. Right? Language, subject, Language plus subject. Bix and Cop. Shrink a little bit. Oops. Never mind. Try it again. Sorry about that. I don't use this program as often as the others. Bix and Cop. Language, content. Overlap area. You got it. Language plus content. Whoops, wrong one, sorry. Content can be hard. Remember, I could ask you to draw it. You don't have to worry about length anxiety multiplier. You got it, great. You don't have to. Don't worry about it. Okay, so English and administration, Bix and Cub. Right? That was the introduction. We have to. How come you're not finding? Hang on a second. I may have to go back. There we go. And go this way. Alright. Yeah, so your business self-introductions. Right? Remember that business self-introductions with a name card are extremely short because your name card does your speaking for you. Right? No problem. Listening logs, Zoom student guide, attendance policies, young public servant for a day. And after this, I'm going to jump into the book. Alright, so young public servant for a day. We had that reading. You should know the vocabulary. I think I discussed all of the really challenging words. Okay? Some of the key ideas were the idea of metropolitan city versus like Daegu Gwangyeok시, the idea of a Korean metropolitan city versus metropolitan area in English. Metropolitan feels like big city, lots of tall buildings, right? And the idea of how far you go away from the city's center. We talk about greater Daegu, meaning people who feel like they're connected to Daegu. That maybe we could say a 100-kilometer rule or a 100-mile rule. 100 miles is about 160 kilometers. The idea that if you can watch TV, you might feel part of that community, and you might tell people from further away, yeah, I'm from Daegu, when actually you're from Yeongcheon. Alright? So we had keywords, and we also had the greater theme, and you can see the big three questions here. Topic, what's it about? What's the main concept? Why did the author write this? Don't worry about where it was written or who the intended readers are. That's not part of your test. We can talk about the vocabulary as I mentioned. Remember that vocabulary in the context of the reading. Context. Where it fits in the reading. A word can have more than one meaning. What does the word mean in this situation? And then the idea of discussion. Do you agree with this concept? Could it work in Korea? Is it needed? Would it be useful? Why or why not? Okay. That means you share your thinking. That means there isn't a perfect answer. There isn't even a right answer. But there could be a bad answer. If you say something that's nonsense, that isn't connected to the reading, or doesn't seem like you're thinking, there could be a nonsense answer, and a nonsense answer is a bad answer, okay? So I'm listening for something that makes sense. Even I don't agree. That's okay. I don't have to be the right answer in this. I'm listening for a reasonable answer. Someone could think like that. All right? Now, before we go further, let's jump into the book. First, I want to remind you that in the back of the book is a phrase book. You should be familiar with the words and phrases for chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can carry this book anywhere. And if you've lost this book, that same section is further back in the book. Summary language. Here, I'll put it closer. Summary language, Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4 is in here. You'll also find in the book, after the summary language section, a glossary, which might or might not be helpful. Can you see that? This way more? Yeah. A glossary. So, if it's in the book, even I didn't talk about it. If it's in the book, it can be on the test. Now, for your listening test and for your one-to-one test, you can use your book. But it's a time test. The more time you spend in the book, the less time you have in the test. And for the listening test, I will go to the next question. And you can't say, oh, touch him, wait a minute. Nope, doesn't work. For the one-to-one test, I'll give you more time. I'll say, do you want more time? But you need to understand that when I give you more time, it's taking away from your total time. You don't have 10 minutes for the one-to-one test. It's about 7 minutes. More than 7 minutes, I'm going to stop you. And if you only did 3 questions and there's 7 questions, you lose 4 points. 4 questions. Now, everybody always wants to know, Professor, how long is the test? The answer is, I don't know yet. I didn't write it yet. I never write my test until after the review. Let me say that again. I never write my test until after the review. Why? So I can't tell you the questions. Because I'm not good at keeping secrets. So, I don't write the test until after the review. That way I know exactly what we talked about. And I don't let you contact me to ask questions about the test because I'm not good at keeping secrets. So if you ask me about the test, I'll say, I can't talk about that. Alright? Now open the book, page 1, introductions. Pretty simple, we did it. Very quick self-introductions. In Unit 1, we talk about things like a handshake. Now, I can't do a handshake online, which is too bad because traditionally, a handshake was part of my midterm test. Do you give me a nice handshake? If you give me something that's like a dead fish, that's no handshake. That's not a point. One thing we did talk about when we looked at page 2, I said page 1, page 2, Unit 1, you can see the note in my book. Here we go. You probably can't read it, but we talked about the difference between evening and night. How in English, the difference between evening and night is more in my mind. Right? In Korean, you have much science about times. For example, 새벽 is a time we don't even have. We could say before the dawn or pre-dawn, but there's no real block of time. I think 새벽 in Korea is like 2 a.m. until 6 a.m. or something like that. I'm not sure. But in English, evening means life is still going on. The work day is done probably, but I'm still out and about. I'm still willing to be public. But when we say night, it's kind of like I'm in my castle. The drawbridge is up. I'm in my pajamas. I don't want to talk to the world. Which is kind of why video telephone is resisted by many people because, once it's nighttime and I'm in my pajamas and I take off my makeup, I don't really want people to see me. So, evening and night. Page 3, more of the same. We talked about some ways to say nice to meet you. Down on the bottom of page 3. Happy to meet you, pleased to meet you, nice to meet you, good to meet you. Happy, pleased, nice, good, and glad. 5 different things we said. Happy, pleased, good, nice, and glad. Page 6 was a listening. Don't care about that, except you'll see at the bottom of page 6 my note, my phone number with the little curlies, and I said onesies and twosies. It's up to you which way you do, onesies or twosies. 619-423-5138. 619, those are onesies. 423, 23 is a twosie. 5138, those are twosies, right? Two together. So ones and twos, onesies and twosies. Page 5 was a quick review. I reminded you the difference between surname, which is family name, versus given name. Surname or family name is the name you take from your father, probably not every country. And given name is the name that your mother gives to you, or she checks with the wise old fortune teller who says a good name for you. In Korea, mostly surnames are one syllable. Park, Lee, Kim. And given names mostly are two syllable. Jung-hee, right? Eun-gyung. But it's not always perfectly even in Korean. I know some Koreans named family name Namgun, right? So it's not perfect. Page 6, we talked about titles and names. You should know that. We talked about Mr., Mrs., Miss, and Ms. You should be able to hear those differences. Ms. sounds like M-I-Z. Married, not married, I don't know, I don't care, she didn't tell me, it's top secret, it's not important. Just like Mr. Remember my comment about the questions on page 6 where it had true, false, and I don't know? And I don't know is not a big shame in English, because I don't know might be my fault. I'm a bad student, I didn't study. But I don't know could be, you didn't tell me. It's not my fault. You didn't tell me. That information is not available. Right? It's not part of my job. It's not my responsibility to know how to program in Pascal. Yeah. Once upon a time I learned a little bit, but that was 40 years ago? 35 years ago. Something like that. So, and it was never my job. So, I don't know it. I don't care. So, just because you say I don't know does not mean shame. Alright? Page 7, don't care. It's just listening. You should keep practicing your listening. Listening can be on your midterm test. For example, numbers. Page 8, don't care about Toshiba, Nestle, Motorola, IKEA. I'm not testing you about the company, but you should be ready to talk about your company. Page 9 is a quick business introduction at a meeting, at a seminar. Okay? I found out your name because you're wearing a name badge, or because you were a famous speaker at the seminar and I heard you, and I walk up to you and I say your name. And then I say my name. Hello, Mr. Lyons. I'm Ron Young. And he says, nice to meet you, happy to meet you, good to meet you, pleased to meet you. And then he'll probably say something like, who do you work for? Who are you with? Remember we talked about with instead of saying work for? The bottom of page 9 shows what company do you work for, or what do you do, or who are you with. Now, what do you do is another thing we talked about. I'm an office man is not an answer. What do you do? You could talk about your profession. I'm an engineer. You could talk about your job title. I'm a sales representative. Right? Or what do you do? You could say, I'm with Samsung Electronics. That doesn't really say what you do, but it's sometimes an answer. I have another note here on page 9 that talks about 민원실. And how do we translate 민원실, or maybe 동사무소? And the most popular answer nowadays is Citizens Service Center. Citizen, C-I-T-I-Z-E-N-S apostrophe, two citizen or more, plural, citizens, and then possessive, 의 in Korean. That's the apostrophe in English. Citizens Service Center. Some people say Citizens Services Center. All the same. Another note I have here is to remind you the difference between worker. Worker. I'm a worker. ER means I do work. Employer is a company that employs, that hires and keeps workers. Employee is a person who is employed, who gets paid to do job. Okay, so worker has to do with the fact that I'm working. Employee has to do with the fact that somebody hired me. So if I am the owner of a small business, am I an employee? No, I'm the owner. Am I a worker? Well, maybe. Maybe as the owner of the company, I am CEO and cashier and cook and floor cleaner. Maybe I'm the only person working in my mini restaurant. Right? So, employee is a person who is employed. Employer is a person who employs, who hires and keeps workers. A worker is a person who works. We don't have working. We don't have that word. All right. Page 10 is a listening assignment about 4 more companies. Again, don't care about these 4 companies. They're not on your test. Qualcomm, Michelin, PDVSA, Panasonic. However, you should be ready to answer the questions about your own company. What company do you work for? Where is your company head office? What does your company make or do? So if you work for City Hall or the 동사무소, you might say, we provide local government services. That could be an answer. We also talked around this time in the lecture about goods, products, and services. Okay, products being something that is produced. Sounds like a machine. Sounds like making a lot of them. Goods are anything that is physical that you can buy. So yesterday I went to the 시장 with my wife and we bought potatoes. And potatoes are a type of produce, not product. Produce, meaning it is something that comes from the earth. It is a type of produce, but it is a good. It's not a product because it's not made in a factory or made in mass numbers in an assembly line or something like that. And services is what people do. Not something physical you can touch, but what people do. So the outcome of a service could maybe be a good or a product. Maybe. But generally we think of services as not having an output. So if I go to the beauty salon and get my hair cut, and I need to, believe it or not, that's a service. Because my new beautiful hairstyle is not considered a good. All right, page 11. 4 more companies. Colgate-Palmolive, Samsung, Nokia, Embraer, NEC. Oh, that's 5 more companies. We're not going to test on those companies. It was just exercise to practice. And the questions were What does it do? Where's the head office? How many employees does it have? So employees could be another thing to talk about in your business self-introduction or in question and answer. Notice at the bottom of page 11 there are some conversation strategies, that is, things that you can use to help in conversation. Can you repeat that? And how do you spell it? If you hear something and you think you don't know the word, and then they spell it and you go, oh yeah, I know that word. I didn't know it sounds like that. Page 12, greetings around the world. About greetings, they give 3 key tips at the bottom of that reading. Look in a person's eyes when you shake hands. Shake hands firmly. That means good, strong, but not too strongly. It says firmly but not strongly. I always say firmly but not too strongly. And shake hands for only 2 or 3 seconds. Don't hold hands forever. But it's also not just a touch. Now with COVID-19, we're talking about things like fist bump or elbow bump, right? Because the virus maybe is being transmitted by hand. All right. And page 13 is basically numbers. But it does have a nice little introduction in the reading for a company introduction. That's the kind of company introduction you want to be aiming for. Less than 15 seconds when you speak. Okay, chapter 3. Page 14. This is that section on frequency adverbs. And that is the next section in our CTL. And I gave you a PDF, which I'm not going to click, that gives you a lot of options. Always, never, almost always, hardly ever, usually, often, occasionally, sometimes, frequently, right? I don't need to do that. Just the comment is that there are more choices than what the book usually shows. However, the choice of the adverb is only part of it. The second part of it is building a sentence with it that makes sense. Okay? So the conversation on page 15 and the reading on page 14 give you an idea of how to build such a sentence. Usually, but notice, not always, usually the frequency adverb goes after the subject. I always. I hardly ever. You sometimes. Do you ever? Question. Do you ever go swimming in the ocean? Okay. So you can see the design. Occasionally, though, just like now, we put the frequency adverb at the very front of the sentence. Please remember, when we're doing conversations, I don't want to hear one-word answers. How often do you go to the park? Sometimes. That's a C answer. C answer. You understood my question, I think. You gave me an answer that's not wrong, but it's so short, I can't give you any bonus points. I rarely go to the beach. Ah, that's a B answer. I asked a question, you gave me an answer, you understood my question, you gave me an answer which is grammatically correct. The grammar seems right. A little error, I don't mind. Basically, the grammar seems right, and it's a sentence. That's a B answer. The A answer, the A plus answer, you could say, is that you not only answer my question, but carry on the conversation. Usually that means, ask me a question. Or give me more information. How often do you go to the beach? Well, I rarely go swimming. How often do you swim in the sea, was my question. And your answer was, I rarely go to the beach. However, I enjoy swimming in the river. Okay, well, that's a pretty good answer. Didn't actually answer my question, which was, how often do you swim in the sea? And you said, I don't often go to the beach. Could you swim in the sea, not from the beach? Well, yeah, if you have a fishing boat. When you're fishing out in the ocean, you could jump out and swim in the sea. That's kind of strange. So the answer was a good answer, and you continued the conversation by asking a question or provide more information. All right. Page 16, basically what we did there was mostly talk about how you would handle that on a TOEIC test. And it's good listening practice. Page 17 was simple practice conversation with a partner. We did it in Zoom, asking and answering questions. And I gave you a homework assignment to write 8 sentences with 8 typical activities using different frequency adverbs. So I sometimes sleep late. I always take a shower in the morning. I never brush my teeth with baking soda. Actually, very, very rarely, almost never, I will brush my teeth with baking soda. Da-da-da-da-da-da, right? So what I want to point out is that at the bottom of page 17, we have a B answer, not an A answer. On the bottom of page 17, it says, how often do you work overtime? And the answer is, I hardly ever do. And you know what? That's a B answer because you didn't continue the conversation. You didn't extend the conversation. That means one person is always asking questions and one person is always answering, and that's not a conversation. All right. Page 18, working and eating around the world. I'm not going to test you, am not going to test you about United States or South Korea or Argentina. That's not the point. What we did talk about was the idea of power breakfast and other meals, which is up here. All right. Also, the facing page, right? Here's the times on this page. You can see that. And then on this page, there's a bunch of clocks. I suggested a bunch of prepositions for telling time. And while in the listening test, you probably wouldn't do this. In the one-to-one interview, I could show you a clock and say, what time is it? And you could give me an answer, and I could say, now tell me a different way. Tell me a different way. So if we are looking at, let's say, image E here, which way? This way. Says 8:45, the clock is 8:45. We could call that 8:45. We could say 15 minutes before 9. We could say 8:45. We could say 45 minutes past 8. We could say 45 after 8. Right? We can't say 3/4, sorry. Alright, so we're now on Unit 4. And this one, instead of focusing on the adverbs of frequency and what times, we're now doing ing, present progressive. And it's pretty simple, the various things that are happening in the office. I know that you have studied English for many years, and so I expect that you will know a lot of different ing things. A lot of basic verbs. So if I do some body language like, what am I doing? Coffee. You could say, you are drinking coffee. Ding ding dong. You could even say, you're drinking coffee. I love coffee. That would be an A+ answer. Or, you're drinking coffee. Can I have some? A+ answer, right? Making more of a conversation. On page 20, I have a note to myself about coworker and colleague, and we talked about that. A colleague is somebody probably wearing a tie or a more professional kind of job, and they either work with you in your office or maybe in your company and you feel like colleagues, or they work in a different company but they do the same kind of work that you do, and when you meet them in a meeting or somewhere in public, you feel like, yeah, we work with the same headaches, we work in the same field, we're colleagues, a kind of like a brotherhood because of the kind of work we do. So coworker and colleague. So we will be looking at page 21 in our class, in our Zoom class, and I want to let you know that part of what we're going to be doing is charades, which is the idea of one person is acting and the other person is trying to guess what they're doing or what is happening. All right? Just like you are drinking coffee. And page 22 is pretty much the same thing. Page 23 is pretty much the same thing. And we'll be doing page 23 also in our Zoom class. I also talked to you about the idea of think about your future typical day, typical, average, normal, usual day. 5 years after you graduate, when you have your job, I'll say, oh, it's 5 years in the future, you have your job. It's Monday at 10:30 a.m., a typical day. What are you doing? And you could say, I'm writing a report. Ding, that's all I want. You don't have to make a conversation out of that because I ask you a direct question. What are you doing? Okay, now we can do this in one-to-one interview, or we could do this in the listening test. In your listening test, you write what your tongue would say. Write what your tongue would say. Don't worry about spelling, it's not a spelling test. Okay? If you want to write a Korean word, then you could write a Korean word using Hangul. That would be fine. Okay? We're almost done here. Page 24 is a reading. Again, don't worry about shell. Don't worry about the details of the reading. Page 24 was my kind of long discussion about CSR, right? Corporate social responsibility, which we can also call corporate citizenship. We also talked about the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle, which is not in here because I told you I'm not going to put it on the 학습 자료. It's in the Zoom. However, as I mentioned, not here yet, but soon to go up here, I will upload the PowerPoint file that I have for everything I have done in PowerPoint that you have seen in a recorded class or in Zoom where I showed a picture. So you'll be able to see, for example, the 3R image that I showed you in class. It will be there. But anything that I put in a notepad and showed you little text, or that I typed into a bubble on the page in the recording, okay, bubbles in the recording, it's only in the recording. It's not in the PowerPoint. Finally, things we did in Zoom where I talked but I didn't put into the PowerPoint is not available. And I told you, you need to talk to classmates if you missed a Zoom or if you didn't take notes, because things that were in the Zoom can be on the final test, can be on the midterm test. That includes our next Zoom. Anything that I say in that Zoom session can be on the midterm test, can be on the final test. Okay. enough for today. I want you to spend this week catching up and studying in my class, catching up and studying in your other classes. So I'm a little bit shorter this week. It's very important that you get focused here. Your grades depend on your performance. If the school tells us some percentage of A's, those are maximums, not minimums. If nobody gets an A on my test, I'm sad. But that's your job. It's not my fault if you don't get an A. Everything that you need to know, everything you need to be able to do is in the Zoom, is in the recorded lectures, which you can go back and play again, is in the PowerPoint, is on the 학습 자료. That's all for today. I'll see you later in the week. Have a good week.